Drum roll, please. It's my birthday. It's finally my birthday. I feel like I've been waiting forever, and yet I feel like I haven't been waiting at all. So, what's happening, people? Surprisingly, on my birthday, it's actually day 11. And so, there are only a couple of days left to this countdown to clarity. And I usually record all of my videos during the day. It is just after midnight. And I wanted to record this video on my Earth Day because there were some things on my mind. My Earth Day is interesting. Over the past couple of years, it's become bittersweet. One has been that I haven't really felt like celebrating my birthday, not because of any particular feeling I have about myself, but just what birthdays have come to mean, um, what people make them mean, what type of experiences I've had with the people who I normally would celebrate my birthday with. And just over the past couple of years, I haven't really wanted to celebrate, which is why it was so important for me to record the video from yesterday, from day 10, to just talk about what a celebration is, how I redefined what a celebration would be for me, to just be enjoy. Just be enjoy without all of the attachments, without all of the it has to be this way and these people have to be involved, and just let it be. Another reason my birthday has been bittersweet is because a couple of years ago, I guess this was 2000, this had to have been 2010, 3 years ago, on my birthday, everything's going fine. I'm having a regular birthday. My son was a newborn, and things were changing in my life pretty rapidly. I was just happy that anybody wanted to say happy birthday and eat a piece of cake because I had so much going on and so much responsibility. And there was actually a friend of mine who I had hooked up with another friend of mine at one point in time, and they weren't very cool. And at one point, I wasn't cool with him either. We had just kind of fallen out over some Gemini Pisces type stuff, just, being four different people at one time, the two of us. And so, we just kind of didn't have the most beautiful relationship for a while. We actually weren't talking to each other. We would see each other and kind of, hey, how you doing? And then at a certain point, when I saw him, I said, hey. And we started talking, and everything was cool, and it was at a party, and I was pregnant at the time, and he was like, oh my gosh, you're pregnant, I can't believe you're about to have a baby. Like, he just couldn't believe it. And his immediate response was, so who's your girl? Interested in her. And I began to hook them up, and they dated for 5 seconds, and shortly thereafter stopped being friends. It was just a general consensus that their personalities were not compatible. And then they didn't really talk after that. They bumped into each other but didn't really talk. I bumped into him, I did talk. Well, the interesting moment came in 2010 on my birthday. It was that morning, March the 5th. Somewhere during the afternoon, I got a phone call that he had transitioned. And the first thing I thought was, what do you mean? Like, that doesn't make sense. What are you talking about? Like, why would that have happened? Like, did somebody do something to him? Like, it's a young cat. Why would that have happened? I don't know, what actually happened. And I don't get very consumed with the details when it comes to death because I like to honor the person that I knew, the person that was here. I usually don't even go to funerals when people pass, unless it would just be blatantly disrespectful for me not to. But I don't like funerals, and I don't like watching the pomp and circumstance and the play and the, acting theatrical production that a funeral for me sometimes is. I understand its necessity. I understand people need to be able to move on. People need to be able to have closure. People need this ceremony, like most ceremonies, because it's a transition from one stage to the next. I get all of that. doesn't mean I like it. So they were doing candlelight vigils. They were doing all kinds of things. And I just didn't want to go. I just wanted to sit with what I was told, what had happened. I did my own type of ritual as I typically do. And that was that. And it's weird. It's weird. I think he was the first person that I ever knew that, his Facebook page stayed open and people just pour comments and, stories and pictures. I mean, even till right now, still, I just put a story on there maybe a month and a half ago. And I knew this day was coming and I was like, oh man. But I mentioned this story not to expose someone who's transitioned or, talk about my friend or talk about myself. But there were some very important lessons that came with this transition. And for me, the first one was that you just never know. It feels so much better to be clear with someone who transitioned than to be in, oh, I shoulda, coulda, woulda. It feels so much better to know that this person's energy is still available to you for you to remember, reminisce, recall, and it also feels quite appropriate in this case that he would transition on my birthday because he handed me one of the most important lessons I could have ever learned in my life. And it feels like that because of where I am in life right now. And I would have to say that the lesson he left me was crank your stuff out. Crank out your art. Crank out your connection with people. Crank out your music, your paintings, all your desires. Just crank them out. Like you can't sit here and find, you cannot sit here and find this type of clarity as if you know everything, as if you know the end, as if you know all the details, as if you have anything to take for granted. And I got this message once when my father transitioned in 2005. I now got this message again through him in 2010 for one reason and one reason only. To me, it just made sense that someone who was younger than me, who I had watched in close proximity, just live his life like to no end, like just cranking out all this work with all this purpose and all this desire and all of this inspiration, just watching him crank it out. And he was highly inspired. He wasn't just inspired in the sense of, I'm going to do stuff for other people. He was highly inspired doing things for himself. He was highly inspired being involved in a lot of different things. And I felt right away that, wow, that's crazy. Like, he's physically gone, but he has all of this work behind that he left. That they could have like a one-man show with his work, and any collaborators who had ever worked with him, they could actually have a show with very different types of media that he had created and put it all together in the show. And there is just something about that really, I don't know. It was just something about it that really spoke to me. And I think what it was that I had all these ideas, dreams, and desires in my head that I hadn't yet started to crank out. I hadn't yet begun to give them the life that they deserved. I had a vision. I had an idea of what I wanted to do. I knew that I would do it in my head. I didn't know when. I didn't know who was going to fund it. I didn't know how I was going to get my hands on the resources. I didn't know who was going to promote it, who was going to be my PR person to get it out to the world. All of these huge dreams. And it was him that reminded me that they just start as these seeds. They start as these small seeds of, I want to make music for people. And so making music for people, I am going to put out some beats that I made. And he was totally unafraid. He wasn't worried about somebody taking his work. He wasn't worried about, any of that. He just put it out on a CD and was handing it out to people that he loved. He was DJing, around the world. He was doing different DJ gigs and trying to get money for his family. And different things like that. He was also um, my first photography client. Like, that's major to me. You know what I mean? Like, he was my first creative photography client. He was the first person that I said, hey, I want to come take pictures of you. And he was like, really? I was like, yeah, I think you have an interesting look. I just want to come and take pictures of you and your artistic element. And at that time, he was working at a record store. And the record store that he was working at was in Pilsen. And I went to this record store and just stayed there for like an hour, hour and a half. Real cool vibe. Just messing up, taking crappy shots, going back in, taking some more shots, taking crooked shots, taking overexposed, underexposed shots. Just constantly trying and trying and trying and trying until I felt confident enough that I had some pictures that really captured his essence and that I liked creatively. And that is kind of where my love affair with creating in front of my camera began. Set up the scene, put the person in it, and capture their essence and give it back to them. I think it's just strange because as I'm saying this to you, I have truly taken example from his life. I've taken example from all of the things that he felt passionate about. There were a couple of different instances in which we talked about this passion. There was one time we sat at the lakefront. We sat there and we talked, and, we just gazed at the stars, heard dudes on the lakefront with, beer bottles, cursing and, laughing loud. And, we laughed at them. It wasn't like, oh my God, why are they so loud? It was just funny because they were living in their passion too. They were living in that space where they felt happy and free, right at the lakefront, not too far away from us. And here we are, contemplating life, listening to the waves, watching the pattern of the waves, staring at the sky, talking about how many more cities he was going to DJ in, how life was starting to pick up for him. And, me talking about where I was working at the time and how I didn't want to be there forever. And I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I love photography, but to what extent, and then he reassured me that my photography was dope and, you really should continue doing what you're doing. And I remember being frustrated because I kept saying, it's just taking so long. It's just taking a long time for me to get what I want to get. And he said, just keep practicing it. And it's so funny, even as I'm saying this, I say this to people now, like the difference that those few years will make. Next time I saw him was at his house. And, he had an event and he was a gatherer of people. There were constantly people who would come by and hang out at his house. And we would all sit around and talk and just discuss passionate shit. That's all I can say it was. It was just passionate shit, Yeah, there were just so many different things that I enjoyed about his energy and still enjoy about his energy. And, I think that this just strikes me so different because, like I said, I have embodied that energy. I have become that lesson, and I have begun teaching that lesson to other people. And if you're talking about a legacy, that brother lived one. And it's not, in what people would say is the commercial sense, but everybody that he touched was touched. Everybody that he incorporated them fully. He fully brought them into his space, into his world. I can't say he held back much. You might not have known everything about him, again, in true Gemini form, but whatever part he connected with you with, he played that full out with you and allowed that space to be totally fulfilled. And why am I saying all this? Well, for the longest time, I've watched people like Aaliyah, Tupac, a whole bunch of celebrities, some personal friends, and I've watched people live their passion. And when they get to a certain point in their passion, just when it seems like everything is going great, they transition. Yeah. And for the longest, dirty little secret, I haven't wanted to fully get to that point because I was afraid that might mean the same thing for me. And I say this with a frog in my throat because I can't even believe I'm sharing this, but I am. I used to think that if I lived my passion all the way out and I got to the point where I was happy and I felt like I was floating, I was on top of the world and things were going great, that meant I was on my way out. And it was like, what? So as soon as things get well, you're on your way out? What part of the game is that? And I never got an answer to what part of the game that was. But what I did learn and what I did comprehend at some point, as I said, you can't be afraid of that. You can't be afraid of that transition. That transition is success, just like it is if I were here and I had a transition in my life. Am I asking for it? No. Is it inevitable? Sure. And, you know, when you're living your truth and you're living your passion, you can't be afraid of that. It's as nerve-wracking as it is to think about. It's probably why I don't like funerals, why I don't like all of that. When I think about people I love and people who have meant a lot to me and people who have lifted me up and helped me and carried me, all of the ancestors that I have that have been extremely instrumental in my own success, no matter how I see it. Those people have been absolutely fundamental. And how could that be bad? You know what I mean? Like, how can I make that bad? How can I make that any different than any other facet of existence? And so I'm still working on this. I'm still working on this. But I'm clear now that if you're living your passion, you're living your truth, you don't have time to think about that. You don't have time to think about that. You can prepare for it, but you don't have time to think about it. You don't have the luxury to think about, ooh, what will happen when it's time? And thank you for sticking with me if you're listening to this, because this is not an easy topic for me to talk about. I don't talk about it in conversation with anybody. And I have never, had this conversation with anybody. So this is a first. And it's on my birthday, so I'm contemplating birth and death at the same time, which is so Piscean of me. I often feel like, well, death is not really death and life is not really life, but there's something in between that makes the two of them equal partners. And I haven't figured out what that is yet. I don't know if I ever will figure out what that is. But I know that I am so grateful to be alive. So grateful to be alive. I'm so grateful to have given birth and given life to someone else. I am so grateful to still have an amazing family, to still have people in my family that are amazing. I think I feel a sense of continuity. Even when people are transitioning around me, or even when things seem that they're coming to an end, there always feels like another beginning. So if I take this for the story that I just told about my brother Tape Deck, what could I say is being continued from his life? And I think I've said it. I think I've said that this has just been, it's bittersweet. It's always, it's my birthday, but it's Tape Deck's exit day, and there is more to the story. So, if any of you are out there listening to this, is resonating with you or it's bothering you, it's perhaps something that you need to think about. Just reflecting your own time. I know how I feel having these conversations, and I know that they feel similar to when I see someone on TV in a position of power where they're able to give to everyone, when they're able to give, big checks of money to people who need it the most to change their lives, when they're able to give gifts and support and food and different things to people. It's that same frog in my throat. It's that same frog in my throat. And this is where any sort of fear that you have about what's going on, you just have to face it. You have to lock it in your vision, and you have to deal with it. And that's what I call myself doing right now. That frog in my throat is indicative of something that I'm still dealing with, processing, so that I can do it. And I'm not moving, maybe as fast as I thought I would or should or could, but I'm also not avoiding it. So that's progress. And I know that deep down inside, Stacy, as I said in yesterday's video, is indeed a bodhisattva. Stacy is indeed someone who really wants to help humanity and really has the desires to allow all underdogs to feel like top dogs, because I've been an underdog. Someone who allows all people who are popular to also experience what the power of popularity can do for other people who are not, because I've been there too. And I want people to really stop the nonsense that we all hold on to for too long. Start giving people their roses. Start honoring people. Can't do everything, but everything that you can do can be done. You just start taking the time to open up, have conversations, create something, provide something, share something, recycle something, bring back something sacred that we think has been lost, present something, ask for something, have a dream bigger than the dreams that you can recall right now. Create a new dream. Create something else that speaks to the type of life that would just blow your mind if you did it. Yeah. Sobering, right? If something doesn't feel right, then perhaps that's the time to examine what else can you do? What else can be done? I was about to go into therapy this year. I was like, I need to go into therapy. There's so many different things going on with me. I really just need to go into therapy and work it all out, because I need somebody to listen to me, to talk to me, and be able to help me get through some things. And the universe just kept saying, no, it's nothing wrong with therapy. But the universe said, your stories are to be shared with a larger audience. And I was just like, but why? Why do I have to do that? I just want to go talk to somebody. I just want to sit down with somebody and talk. I don't think anything's wrong with me. I think I need to process some things. I think it's perfectly freaking healthy. And therapy works. Been in it before, wanted to go back. It works. So I was like, yeah, that's what I need to do. And the universe said, nah. No, you have a bigger charge. Because of what you do, because of how you structure your business. If I haven't said this before, I'll say it now. The current mission of my business is to honor your lifestyle. Lifestyle, okay? I say honor your lifestyle because when I look at people, unfortunate for me sometimes, I don't see anything but goodness. Even when someone has an attitude, even when someone is carrying an ugly look on their face, even when someone is not dressed, in a way that is delicious, even when someone is saying things that are just not truth about me, I somehow always come back to that space in between I think I talked about. And I find that not only do I have compassion for people, but I have strong forgiveness. I don't always demonstrate it as forgiveness. And sometimes I can't forgive myself for being forgiving. But I have strong levels of forgiveness for other people. And the reason is because I've been through so much. I have really been a person of experience. My father used to always joke me because he used to always say, Stacy always has to reinvent the wheel. She can't never just do what's already done. She has to reinvent it. And I realized later that part of that was my ego and part of that was my spiritual path. My ego wants to reinvent things because I want to make it my own. My spiritual path wants to reinvent things because I want to find out if it's true. And both of those together have had me experienced a lot of things that I didn't have to do. I didn't have to go through. It makes me who I am, so I'm glad I went through it, but I didn't have to do it. And to embrace myself where I am now, regardless of what's going on, is truly an accomplishment. To be able to help others embrace themselves is truly an accomplishment. Um, to be able to look around and not see anything that I can't touch or I haven't touched or I wouldn't want to touch is amazing. I really do feel like exactly what I've called myself for years, which is a goddess. I do. I really do. And I feel like a goddess because that's what the path to womanhood, if you ask me, is about. It is learning to take what's around you and move it around and switch it up and alchemize it for your good and for the good of others. And Ayanla says something about every woman is a midwife for the women behind her. That's true. That's true. We all have to midwife. We all have to bring these other women in, even if we don't feel like they deserve it, even if we feel like, oh, this woman is petty and she said this and she said that. So what? You've been petty too. If the world gave up on you when you were petty, you would be nowhere. You would be nowhere. You'd probably be trying to talk to that therapist I was trying to talk to. And I don't want to leave out the brothers either. I've always had a very strong nurturing instinct with men. Since I was a child, I was a tom girl. No, I was a tomboy. I was a tomboy, and being a tomboy, I might have had on a skirt, but I didn't dress myself. So I'm climbing up rocks and trees and, I'm playing double dutch in my skirt with my skirt hiked up, or trying to anyway. Run around, playing different games, picking up worms, collecting frogs and fireflies, and like I said, climbing up trees and just acting like, what? The world is my playground. This is what I do. What do you mean? When I was in high school, I was still very much a tomboy. And it was one of my first loves, Jermaine, who told me, you have a really beautiful body. You should really wear skirts more often. And had anybody else said that, I'd have been like, yeah, okay. Because I was just so goofy. And I loved being goofy. I was a nerd. I was goofy. And at the same time, I was somewhat popular as well. Go figure. But it's that same thing, not being afraid of who I was, not really liking, everyone's response to who I was, but at the same time, not really changing who I was to fit in. And those words really stuck with me. And had he not said those words, I may not have ever modeled. Had he not said those words, I may have become someone else. Who knows? The things we say to people, the things we share with people, even when we think they'll get offended or whatever, are really life-changing moments. And we need to do that more often. We need to tell people more often. Yeah, I think I was saying I'm happy it's my birthday. I think I was just reflecting back on all of the experiences I've been through and over, how much time and the type of things that really make me happy that I'm here now. And I also think that on some level, I just want everyone to know and feel encouraged that your life is equally valid. It's equally valid, interesting, something someone needs to hear. And sometimes listening to other people gives us the inspiration to talk quietly to ourselves about what's next. So just know, if you're watching these videos, it's not by accident. And it's not just because you love Stacy Patrice. Might have something to do with it, but you're gleaning on yourself. There's something in these videos that is reminding you about who you are. You're resonating with something I'm saying. It's not just empty listening. You may be taking little sentences, and like I like to say, take a sentence and you're putting it on pause. And it's sitting on pause. And you don't do anything with it for years. And then one day, the occasion comes up that you can use the information. You hit the pause button and boom, it comes off. It comes out. It replays. And you're like, oh, God, why am I just now hearing this? Why am I just now unpausing this? And it doesn't matter. Whenever you unpause it, it's appropriate. What else is there to say? It's my Earth Day. Happy Earth Day. I've come so far, have so far to go. I'm grateful for all the inspiration I've received that has me in this place. I have a lot of art to create. Like, this is my full-time job. Being who I am is my full-time job. You know, I think I've mentioned yoga instruction, photography, and spiritual coaching are my 3 jobs right now. It's what I do. They all are integrated. It's how I function. I take those 3 things and integrate them. You've been planting seeds for years. And you hope that by the time, you have a birthday and you can actually be an adult and reflect on what's going on, and you hope that you see that you have an entire garden full of gifts that have been blossoming. Some of them are seasonal. They come in, they're big, beautiful, wonderful, and they go out for the cold and they come back in, and and this is how I see my life, really. I don't get upset if I don't feel like making jewelry all the time. I don't. People ask me to make jewelry at times. I don't want to make jewelry. And that's why it's not one of my 3 things that I do. It's one of the other 75 things I do. And it's because I know that making jewelry requires a certain level of patience. It requires a certain level of inspiration. And my jewelry is one of a kind. None of my pieces are alike. So it's really hard for me to get in that space when I have so much on my mind. When I teach my son how to do puzzles and how to build Lego, and he's building these big houses and amazing, vehicles, and, doing these, 500 plus piece puzzles at 3, it's wild to me how much you can plant in a young person's mind, how much you can plant in anyone's mind. It's us adults that are stubborn. Raphael Sadiq said, help the grown folks. They need more help than the children do. It's true. I've dedicated my life to helping adults. I love helping adults because when we get a shift, we get a shift. But if people give up on us and say, oh, give it all to the younger generation, that's when people get bitter. Some adults are still kids that have not gotten a chance to live out their childhood. They have not had the opportunity to be in that space where they say, okay, now that I'm adult, I'm not struggling. I'm not thinking about how I'm going to make it. I'm not upset with anyone in my family. I've gotten past, what people have said about me, what people have done to me, and now I'm fully stepping into my own because I can. It's a lot of adults never make it there. It's a lot of adults that, wish they could be there, and they see young people and they say, oh, they're so spoiled. And part of why they're saying that is because they didn't even have that opportunity. We have to be more compassionate, not just about the elders, but if it's your mama, if it's your daddy, if it's, your aunts, your uncles, your siblings. I mean, the adults need help. So, let me see. Birth, death, the space in between, helping the grown folks, tape deck. Yeah, what a birthday. What a birthday. I hope that something said sticks, something said inspires, something said resonates, and something said was extremely familiar and you've said it to yourself before. And if that's the case, do your due diligence, pass it on, be the inspiration, do some of the things we talk about, think of some of the things I discussed, and leave a comment below. Let me know, whether it's about your Earth Day, whether it's about my Earth Day, whether it's about some of the stories I told, some of the experiences I've been through. Just really hit the freaking reset button. That's really what a birthday is. Hit the freaking reset button. It doesn't mean you let go of the stuff that's good, but hit the reset button on that. Like, for real. That was last year. That was the year before. Outdo yourself. Compete with yourself. Don't find people out there to compete with. Compete with yourself. Whatever you did last year, it's not good enough anymore. It's not good enough because it's been done. Do something else. Change it up. Switch it up. Make it happen. I love being in the space I'm in. I love having creative tools. I love being creative. I love creative people. I love stories and interviews. And that's probably the next phase of what I'll be doing here is interviewing other people. I'll be talking less and be giving other people the mic so that they can tell their stories, so that we can all, feel a sense of inspiration through what it is that's being said. We can meet these amazing people that we've never met before through the power of the internet. So we're going to get that going. And it's all for you. Like Janet says, thank you so much for listening. Peace. Namaste. I love you. Thanks for the birthday wishes. Mwah. Have a good one. Nothing but love. Talk to you soon. Peace.